I hope you're doing well. Okay, so today's topic, after I got out of meditation, I was really inspired, and this subject I want to talk about is about our desires. Now, I'm sure that I can use a lot of experience like in my present day, like in my life now, and I can use a lot of examples in my life in my past, right? So I think I'm just going to kind of go with a conglomeration of a bunch of different things, like different desires that I've had in the past that have recognized what has caused me to, this is another, us not living our desires and holding close to our desires is another way that we pinch ourselves off from Source, God, our inner being. Like, our inner being is basically the godlike, non-physical aspect of ourselves, right? So that's what inner being is. If you needed kind of like a clarification on that, is that our inner being is basically our non-physical, which is God, Source, you know, the aspect of ourselves that is our highest and greatest good. So, so something that happened just recently sparked something for me to recognize that it kind of was like on a side note of self-worthiness. And as you guys know, I've talked to you so many times about worthiness and self-worth and feeling worthy of everything that, of feeling worthy. Basically, we are worthy. The only reason that we would ever not feel that we are worthy of something is because we have pinched ourselves off from Source, from God, from our true inner being, right? So everybody that comes to the earth is worthy. We just start pinching ourselves off from Source. So anyway, let me go back to the desire thing. So just recently, like, you know, a ways back, a couple months ago or whatever, I started to recognize, and I think I already did a video on this already about desires, but anyway, so you know how I always embrace contrast in my life. Christians like to call it, you know, adversity, trials, tribulation, that kind of thing, but I always say it's contrast. And basically what it is the universe is always setting us up to have experiences in life which, for the main realm of people, look at those things as adversity is like a negative thing. But that's one of the main reasons that we came to the earth, was to experience joy and also to experience contrast, because that's the only way that we expand, that Source, God, expands, and the continuation of the process continues on, right? To, you know, for billions and billions of years. But people have attached all kind of like narratives to having tribulation, adversity, trials, and things like, oh, that's what we have to endure, you know, that kind of thing, which is all false perceptions of labels that humans have put on adversity. But it's basically, that's what I'm chalking it down to, is that we come to earth to have joy. We come to earth also to experience contrast so that we can expand. That's the only way that, you know, you can say evolution, or I mean, that's going to scare people when I use that word, evolution, but it's not in the narrative that you think it is. It's not the definition that you're thinking of, like evolution, we came from a bomb. No, that's not what I'm talking about. So back to the desire thing. So I recognized, like, this was happening, this had happened in my previous marriage, and it's kind of one of the things that actually sparked my whole transformational journey that I began on. It's one of the little aspects of it, you know, and that was my desires. So let me give you like a breakdown. Okay, so when I was raising my children, and my ex and I had an explanation of, okay, this is your definition. I don't know if we necessarily said it out loud, but like the definition was like, the mother, I come from a very Southern background, you know, hospitable upbringing that was old Southern charm, but also very, I don't know, a lot of people call it very, you know, backwards thinking, because it's like you're barefoot, pregnant, you stay home, you cook meals, you take care of the munchkins. And that's your duties as a wife, right? And so that was never really the definition that we went with, but it sort of was, because I had grown up that way and I actually liked being a stay-at-home mother. There was never a time in my life that I ever said, oh my God, I want to go to work and be a full-time, career woman. That just wasn't me. I've never wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do, the things that I'm doing now, actually. And so after time went on in my marriage, and I always fulfilled my duties to the best of my ability and things of that nature. But then after we moved to California, there was a sense of, this real urgency for me to get out and get a job. And I guess it was because the children were getting older and they didn't need me as much, physically as they had in the past, right? When you're changing diapers and you're, feeding and burping and breastfeeding and, that sort of thing, right? And so, so we moved from California to Oklahoma. Well, this is the one thing that sparked it. And I am getting around to the whole desires, but I just want to give you a story because I know that stories are good and it helps you to relate, and it's kind of like metaphorically, it helps the brain to process information better. It's like a known fact. Okay, so then we moved to Oklahoma from California. Well, we're looking through houses and we're trying to find a house that's reasonable because my ex had taken a considerable pay cut. Like, he used to make like upwards to $250,000 a year. And then it went from that to like barely $30,000. Like, I don't care, I'm telling you numbers. Yeah, whatever, it's not a big deal. But that was not in California. He did make decent money, but it was on the lower end scale, right? And then when we moved to Oklahoma, it cost less to live there. But we still wanted to I wanted to live in an old house. Obviously, I always want to live in an old house. I've always wanted to live in an old house. I only got to do that 2 times in my marriage, in my past marriage. And it just seemed to be, to my dismay that I even actually had that. Like, that was never going to happen again. Anyway, so let me just get off that subject because I'll get starting irritated. Anyway, so we're looking around for homes. And we're trying to find something within our price range and it be a rental. And I wanted to live in an old house because I was tired of living in new houses. I was like, I'm the one that stays home all the day long. And I want to live in a house that's old. I want it to have character. I want it to be in like an old historic neighborhood. I want an old house. So we had found this beautiful, beautiful house. Like, it was darling. It was like a little arts and crafts, 1920s. And I just thought, okay, well, I'll homeschool the kids or I'll drive them, right? I'll get permits that I can drive them because I wanted to have this old house. Well, obviously I didn't get that. So I thought, okay, I'll just resign to the fact that we're going to have to, it was basically he makes the money, so he gets to choose where we live. And and you can probably go back on all my old videos and see this. Like, there was huge marital arguments after this whole incident. So we finally found this house that I show you guys on this video. I should probably put the link below, but this was the video. And so that I gave it like a little tour of this home in Oklahoma. Now, here was the catch. The house was I think it was like $300 more than what we would normally have spent on a house. But we were going day to day. We were living in a hotel for almost 3 weeks, or could have been a month. And I was tired of doing it. Like, I was ready to get into a house. And school was gonna start. It was Christmas vacation. And Christmas vacation was coming to a close or whatever. So maybe we weren't in the hotel that long, but it just felt like it, right? And so it was at least a week or 2. And so we were looking at all these different houses every single day, like dun, checking them off the list, and nothing. I was like, I'm not living here. Like, it wasn't that I was a snob, but it was just, I didn't have a good feeling. And I'm all for energy, and I'm all for like feeling that this would be my house, right? So I said, why don't we just up the ante a little bit, a couple $100 more, and that'll give us a different neighborhood and price bracket for nicer homes to look at. So we finally found the house that's on the video, resolved to getting that. But the deal was, this was the deal about desires, okay? So the deal was that I had to come up with $300 extra a month on my own volition, because I was always the one to do the budgeting and stuff. And so I knew that I was going to have to make up for that somehow. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just manifested it. And I was like, okay, I'll figure out a way to make $300 extra a month, right? So that we could afford that house. And I thought that it was a really good deal. I thought that it was a good, it was a nice house. It was a typical Oklahoma home, you know? So anyway, fast forward, and this is where the desire part comes in, okay? Fast forward to us being there a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And every month I'm making the $300, whether it was me selling stuff online, whether it was me having had a little estate sale there, like within months of us moving in, I made probably $850 that night, that day, that one weekend. I made, I think, $850 to $900. And so I'm thinking in my mind, right, I'm equating that to, okay, so I've got this covered 369. I mean, that's 3 months covered that I was able to make that much money, right? Okay, but then it became an issue because I wasn't going out to work, physically clocking in and working at a register or doing something like that. So that became the issue. It was no longer that I was actually bringing home the money every month, but I was doing it in my own way. I wasn't doing it by what my ex had done, which was to clock in, you get a job like everybody else, you make everybody else rich, and then you just do your job and blah, 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 whatever. Then you get your paycheck and you go cash it and you give it to me, okay? And so my whole thing is that the one thing, I mean, yeah, there's a continuing momentum of all of this stuff in my marriage, right? So if I had to break it down, it was the accumulation of all of those years, you guys, in not living my desires. I was actually, because this is what we do, girls, like women, this is what we mostly do. And even girls, I'm talking to these young girls that are watching my channel, because listen to Mermaid Raquel so that you don't have to go through this. Or if you're experiencing now, try to, slow the train down and start living your desires. So anyway, so the accumulation of all of that through the years was the fact that every time I truly had a desire, and so you can recollect that I told you in the beginning, I desired to live in an old house. But because we're old school taught, well, a marriage is compromise. No, the heck it isn't. Let me just explain something to you. You compromise and compromise and compromise, and you will become a doormat with no mind of your own. You won't be able to make decisions on your own. You'll feel completely worthless and have no sense of identity. So no, when people say, well, it's compromise. I compromised in my marriage, and you see, it lasted 25 years of tortured hell, and I became somebody that I didn't even know who I was anymore, because we start, women, to pinch ourselves off from who we really are, our true internal desires, and then gradually we replace our inner being, our inner guidance system with another person, which becomes a lot of times, it can be a variable. It can be your family, your siblings, your parents, your children, your spouse. Most of the time, for women, it's going to be their spouse, especially if you have an insecure identity crisis going on from early on. And a lot of that is stemmed from the lack of getting our needs met as children. It's just, I mean, it's a fact. You look it up. Psychologically, it's a fact. And so it's not like all hope is not lost, but what you have to eventually do, and this is what I recognize, which was another thing that kind of triggered me the other day, was that, feeling I was triggered from my ex the other day. And I was realizing that I was starting to feel like I don't have any worth because I'm not logically making a living like everyone else is. You know what I mean? I'm doing mine in my own way, and this is going to be good enough. And that's what you have to do, you guys, is tell yourself that you are worthy. You don't have to earn credibility for anything in life. What are you doing? When people say, well, what do you do? That is so condescending and so that's conditional love when people ask you that. So don't even listen to them when they're going to say that to you, because that is just them out of the vortex. They're not even in alignment with God when people are asking you to give an example of, what do you do? Well, you don't do anything. No, I don't do anything. I'm being who I am. And that's what we have to get to, women, is to be able to feel that we have this great sense of identity, that we are worthy. We don't have to earn worth. We don't have to go and work at a job if that's not what our true desire is, to feel worth as a human being. That like you need to earn your keep. That is the most ungodly thing that you could ever say to a person. But how many times do we live, or we know people that are in relationships like this, that they go on the power of what you can do for me, or you're not earning your keep. You're not out making a living. So what you have to say doesn't matter. And that's what it became for me in my old relationship. And I said, I will never freaking do that. I don't care if it looks like I'm sitting on my rump and I do nothing. If I don't wash the dishes in the sink, that doesn't mean I'm not worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy, whether it looks like to anyone on the planet that I'm doing anything. I could look like I'm rubbing two sticks together for 5 years and you don't think I'm doing anything. I don't care what you think. And you've got to get to that point of not caring. Don't give a rip what anybody thinks of you, because so many times women, and I know this from my personal experience, is that women run around and they're always trying to validate themselves by feeling that they are worthy of stuff. Like, well, I'm worthy. Look what I do. Look how I take care of the children. Look how clean the house is that I keep it. Look how I made all of our meals. Look how I cooked and did laundry and I hung it and I ironed it and I was of service and I took Sister so-and-so to her doctor appointment. See how worthy I am? And that's what we're doing, women, is we're using these things that we're doing instead of being who we are to receive worthiness. Who's giving you that badge of honor that's worthy? That, you're quote unquote classified worthy now because you've done all this stuff. And I guess I just get a little energetic about it because for one thing, it stems something in me when I get those triggers, with feeling like, thinking about my past or something, or like saying, I desire to do this. And if I say I desire to do something and I desire to do it, I'm not going to shadow myself in the background because I want to make peace, or I want to not have a marital argument, or not this or that. Like, I'm not going to extend any kind of verbal activity when it comes to like me feeling like something like that inside, because that's what we have to do. Another thing, women, is when you feel like maybe this is coming up in your marriage or a relationship with a sibling or a relationship with a with a boss or anything, because it can happen in all realms of our lives, right? But don't go to that person like whenever this is triggered, because it's the worst time that you can do it, because you're automatically going to be defensive, that you have to like validate and support yourself, because we're either going to get angry and want to be defensive because we feel attacked, right? And it's just human nature that we want to do that because we know that internally that doesn't feel right when people are attacking us or people are saying things that are making us, causing us to feel like, I don't feel very good when you said that. Like I'm saying this to myself right inside. And like when this person's saying this or that to me, and I'm like, ooh, that didn't make me feel very good. And the reason that it doesn't make us feel good, women, is because I shouldn't always just say women because I know a lot of men watch my channel too. But why it makes us feel bad like that is because we know that our inner being is not looking at that same comment the same way that we are. Because our inner being, source, our godlike internal self, only sees the good in us, only sees that we are worthy. You know, so we have to remember to it always comes back to us. As much as we would like to say, you know, and I've been guilty of it too, is that we would like to blame other people for why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. You know, why I was feeling the way that I was feeling towards my mother or my dad or my siblings or whatever. The truth of the matter is, this is really about Raquel. And you know, that's going to sound like that's selfish and everything, because it is. That's what we really care about, is ourselves, most importantly, and we shouldn't apologize for that either. And so anyway, so that was my whole take on that, is about our desires. Stop ignoring your desires or thinking that a desire that you have is going to go away, because all of our desires, when we launch those desires out into the universe, right? Source goes to work to make our desires come true. We're the only ones keeping our desires from coming into our lives. We do that. I did that by pinching myself off. No, I refuse, absolutely refuse, and I will take big leaps and bounds to say that I'm not living in this house. I don't want to, I'm not going to. But so many times we drowned out it because of our feeling of unworthiness. So anyway, I hope this served you. I hope that you got some speckle of something out of it. And I just really enjoyed this subject. Like, it was so good. I was so excited to talk about it today. So thank you so much for visiting me. And Oliver says hello. And he's just crashed out on the floor over here. But also, if you would like to help in giving a mermaid her fins, if you would subscribe in the button below, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And as always, I'm yours until my next swim. Ciao!